Point of order.
Point of order, Holly Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I ask my question, I would like to raise a point of order and refer you to Speaker's Rulings 151.6 and 152.1 regarding the transfer of a question, where a question should not be transferred when only one minister could be expected to have personal knowledge of the subject. My original question specifically addressed whether the Prime Minister stood by a statement, and I think it's very difficult for another member to know what's in the mind of the Prime Minister.
Well, we're not going to go down this path again. I've heard this argument before, but the question is fundamentally about students being able to borrow for living costs under the student loan scheme and the relationship of that to student allowances. Clearly, the Minister for Tertiary Education is in a position perfectly able to answer that question. So I don't think the House needs to waste more time on that. Holly Walker, question number 9. Question number 8.
Speaker. Point of order.
Point of order, Holly Walker.
I seek leave of the House to transfer the question back to the Prime Minister.
Leave is sought for that course of action. Is there any objection? There is objection. Question number 8, Holly Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Tertiary Education, and asks, does he stand by the Prime Minister's statement yesterday that the amount a student can borrow for living costs under a student loan each week is very similar to the student allowance?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, yes, because for the majority of students undertaking postgraduate, master's or PhD study, their allowance of $170.80 per week will be replaced by the student loan living costs of $172.51 per week, and that seems quite similar to me. Of course, the member also does need to take into account the accommodation benefit and accommodation supplements when drawing comparisons for individual students before and after Budget 2012 changes.
Holly Walker.
Supplementary. Did he tell the Prime Minister then that there is a $72 difference between the $172 a week a student can borrow for living costs and the $245 maximum they can receive on a student allowance with the accommodation benefit? And does he also consider those two amounts to be very similar?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think the members, if I may say so, being slightly disingenuous, because it refers to the accommodation supplement, accommodation benefit with allowances, but doesn't refer to the accommodation supplement, which is available with student loans sometimes. So, for example, it does vary for different students. Some of them are better off. For example, Mr. Speaker, if you had a single 23-year-old with no children, not working, living away from home in Wellington, and the parents living together with no other full-time students in the household and a combined income of $42,000, then their allowance plus their accommodation benefit would be $212.51, and next year their student loan plus the accommodation supplement would be up to $272.51, depending where they're living.
Holly Walker.
Can he then guarantee that with the accommodation supplement, every student currently eligible for a student allowance for postgraduate study will have the same amount to live on each week as they have before these changes?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
No, I can't guarantee that for every student, but what I can say is a number will be better off. There are some for whom they would be worse off, but can I make a couple of points about the transition measures that were announced at the time? And that was that students that firstly with current student allowance applications that start in 2012 and finish in 2013 will continue to be eligible until the end of that period. Students who apply for student allowances in 2013 for an enrolment period that started in 2012 will not be affected. And students with a dependent partner or children can continue to receive a student allowance for up to 1 year until 31 December 2013 or until they use up their 200-week lifetime entitlement to student allowances, whichever comes first. And the student must in that case be continuing to the same qualification. So we have sought to place those transition measures in place, but the important point of the policy is that we're expecting those that have gone on to postgraduate study in the Masters and PhD area who will be earning between 20 and 50% on average more than a person who gets an undergraduate degree once they qualify, that those people will be expected to use a student loan scheme and therefore pay that back so we can reinvest in further tertiary education.
Holly Walker.
Supplementary. How does he imagine a third-year clinical psychology student who is required to work full-time, 4 days a week as an unpaid intern, attend 1 full day of classes and complete assignments and exam preparation in the evenings and weekends will survive on the $172 per week she can now borrow under the student loan scheme?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Well, Mr Speaker, I need to clarify with the member, they're referring to a person studying what level of study? Can I
invite the member to clarify her question.
Third-year clinical psychology is a postgraduate qualification.
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Well, Mr Speaker, I can't answer that particular member's example because it is the point that is being made and has been made through this question is it varies depending on the person's individual circumstances. So if on the base allowance and the base student loan it's the same, but depending on their personal situation and their accommodation situation, either could be more or less, and we don't know the answer to that question until we know that person's absolute circumstances.
Holly Walker.
Agree. How much longer will it take students of clinical psychology or indeed teaching or other postgraduate qualifications to pay back their student loans with the addition of the $172 extra per week they must now borrow to live? And how will that add to the country's student loan debt burden?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, again, I can't give the exact numbers for that. What I can tell the member is, again, that the sort of the postgraduate people that we're talking about are going to earn, on average, significantly higher sums, not only than people that get an undergraduate degree, but also people that don't get a degree at all. And we are asking those people, the ones that never go to university, to subsidise through their taxes 70% of the tuition of the students that go to university, to subsidise more than 40 cents in the dollar of the cost of their student loans, and in some cases also subsidise their student allowances. Now that's a very big subsidy from somebody who doesn't go to university to somebody who does, and who actually could be earning anything between 70 and 100% more than that person once they leave university.
Question number 9, Dr. Cam Calder.
Mala lava lisoi fua, Mr Speaker. To the Minister of Courts, what